Thank you, Austin, for inviting me here to be part of this really exciting and wonderful discussion. I know I stand between you and lunch, so I'm very mindful that you're all getting hungry. So I'm going to keep my remarks brief and really answer questions that you might have. The main thing I want to talk about is this new directorate. Well, first of all, I don't speak for NSF any longer. I used to speak for NSF till 2016, but now you are hearing from me in my role as UCI Vice Chancellor for Research and Professor. So TIP, in my opinion, is the single biggest change at NSF since its founding. So if you think about NSF, its first life was till 2022, as NSF was created back after the Second World War by Vannevar Bush and his wonderful report, Science, the Endless Frontier. And creation of TIP, to me, represents a second life for NSF. And if it goes well, which I certainly hope it does, it will mean a completely different science funding landscape for United States for the next 50 years. And so that's my big hope for TIP. And why do I say that? NSF historically has been a basic research agency, which is really what it is going to remain even into the future. So no compromise on the fundamental research, say in physics or mathematics or geoscience or biological science, that will all continue. But with the TIP directorate, NSF is taking a square aim at the innovation part of its mandate, is how do you translate research advances into societally beneficial innovations? Until now, we left it sort of, to random chance or things just happen and NSF doesn't play a role in that. NSF is now saying, no, we have a big role to play. So that's the origin of the TIP directorate. We have been preparing, helping NSF from my sort of current role to envision what this new thing is going to be. To do that, we had a workshop in May of 2021, almost a year and a half ago, or almost a year ago. We called it National Networks of Research Institutes. And what our idea was is that this cannot be the same old NSF research centers. So we know all STCs, we know ERCs, we know materials research centers. If we did the same, we wouldn't get different results. So we said we've got to imagine something very different. And we did that. That report is out in public. If you want to see it, just drop me an email, or I will send it to Austin. You can send it to all the attendees here. In that, we envisioned this new network of research institutes across the nation. The Engines program that Arvind talked about came out of that. So I want to just emphasize on a few things on that and then answer your questions. One of the most important things we said is that this has to be geographically distributed. We cannot have innovation engines go to Silicon Valley, okay? You don't need it. Silicon Valley doesn't need it. Stockton, maybe. Riverside, maybe. So there are regions of California where we can beneficially put these engines that can drive innovation ecosystems in those regions that have not traditionally benefited from science and engineering research. So a big emphasis on geographic distribution across the nation, especially in regions that are not traditional powerhouse innovation ecosystems. Part two, really bring diverse workforce to power these engines. So it cannot be the same old traditional workforce that has powered innovation ecosystems. We got to bring everybody into the fold. And so big part of it is education and workforce development, reskilling, all of those things that we think about in powering these innovation ecosystems. Third, it is not necessarily university-led. So typical NSF centers are university-led, say, Stanford or Berkeley, they would be the homes for STCs and ERCs. In this case, we are saying this can be a nonprofit that sits in the region. It can bring academia, private industry, nonprofit, government sector into the network, and it's going to be a CEO-led innovation engine. So there will be a full-time person whose job it is to drive the engine, connect with all the partners, and create these innovation ecosystems all across the United States. So that's the third part, is not necessarily academia-led, but led by somebody who has a vision for an innovation ecosystem in that region that takes advantage of existing industry. So you can imagine, say, agriculture in Central Valley, right? I mean, that's a huge industry. Can we power that with with R&D that comes from NSF. So Arvind talked about AI institutes. I want to close with that. So AI will be clearly an enabling technology for these innovation ecosystems. So these are not going to be AI ecosystems. They will be AI-powered innovation ecosystems. And so that's what we are looking forward to. NSF has put the call for proposals out. There was a webinar, so you can go and watch that. And I certainly urge our congressional leaders, and I thank Congressman McNerney for being here, to fully fund the TIP Directorate. I can say that today. I couldn't say that in 2016 because that would be lobbying. But today, as a private citizen, I can say that I certainly hope Congress, House and Senate would fully fund TIP Directorate because our future depends on it. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes, hi, thank you very much. I wanted to know if we work with the ecosystem and we want to partner somehow with NSI, Ether, you or the engines or whoever, what is the method we would use to do that?
I think you would see in the region, in the partners, who is going to be an appropriate leader for that activity. And then, you might help find such a leader who may be an experienced innovator, maybe somebody who has done multiple startups, but who's interested in or who's has a stake in that region. So I remember I used to be at the University of Michigan, and a lot of people returned back to Michigan from the Valley because they wanted a second coming of the automotive industry. So you might look at people who have a stake in the region because of some roots that they have. They grew up there perhaps. Once you have the collection of partners, then you kind of involve the organizations that you just mentioned. So they would be partnering organizations. I hope that answered your question.
Can you hear me back here? Yeah. Dr. Lauren Lav-Stoltz, I work at Healthcare LA, for a member of Congress, and so thank you again for your presentation. I think this is phenomenal where the vision is going, where we're headed, and the outcome. My follow-up question is regarding how do you anticipate the outreach would go into these communities that, whether you define them as vulnerable communities or communities of opportunity, how would you gather those nonprofits to inform them? Yeah. I think the outreach and recruitment is always a challenge for these just wonderful plans. So could you speak a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think that's really a great question, and I hope that we do an excellent job of meeting the challenge you're posing to us. I think it's going to be one of the review criteria at NSF. Is the partnership that is being brought to the table as a proposal, does it have stakeholders from the community? Does it have people who will be impacted by those innovations? So I believe that's what we state in our report, that this should be part of the review criteria. And I would very much encourage, I think you said from LA region, right? Did you say that you are from the Los Angeles area? From DC. So, you can speak for the whole nation then. What I would encourage is that as we think about these innovation ecosystems and engines in different parts of the nation, we bring the non-profit organizations that represent communities as participating entities.
Thank you.
I think we got her first. Behind you.
I first.
Okay, and then you, and then I think we might need a break for a little lunch. Maybe one more. Russ, Cecilia, want to give me a call how far over we are? Yeah, again. How many more questions, Russ, before we got a break for lunch? 2 more. All right, go ahead.
No.
Yeah, 2 of you.
Hi. My name is Sudha Jante. I teach professional adults at continuing studies here at Stanford. So I have some of my students here. Your vision is beautiful. Right, so there are students of mine who are working in industry here in Silicon Valley who want to contribute to this application level of AI. So my question is, when you said it's geographically diverse in other regions, not Silicon Valley and not university-led, how can we create knowledge transfer from Silicon Valley and people here who know innovation and practice in private industry?
I think that's a fantastic question, and we certainly are. Again, I don't speak for NSF. But I imagine an engines program for Stockton, California. Okay, let's just imagine that, right? I would hope that places like Stanford find a way to partner with that collaborative so that AI research that's coming out of your students is connected to the challenges that Stockton ecosystem is going to be addressing. Now, whether that's in agriculture or some other application domain, I don't want to speak to that because I think that the community has to figure out what they want to work on. But certainly there's going to be tremendous opportunity for places like Stanford and the students in your class to be participating in those innovation ecosystems. One other thing that we have said, which I hope gets implemented, is to have these networks be open. That is, we don't want them to be like a closed collection of entities that, okay, this is the group that got funded and now everybody who's not in it is sort of out. We want these to remain open with on-ramps into those collaboratives. So even after the collaborative is formed and the engine gets launched, in future years, there would be opportunities for people to join that engine and make it more powerful. So yeah, look for the results of this engines program to filter through, either be part of the initial membership or then join after it gets launched.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Karthik. I'm the co-founder of Silicon Valley startup Stitchology, and one of our clients is actually the Canadian government, and we were actually working on a very similar project of using data analytics to disseminate AI-related information to different parts of Canada. And one of the things that we noticed was there's a clear divide between rural areas and urban areas, and specifically in the context of rural areas, there's a great deal of fear when it came to AI. So to piggyback off of the last two questions, right? When we're trying to disseminate any sort of AI information to these more rural areas, right? How could we actually create a proper partnership that sort of sends the message to the people of these areas that it's not a them versus AI, right? It's an AI as a tool that enhances their own capabilities, right? Like at the end of the day, we don't want them feeling like they're going to lose their job because AI is sort of penetrating the area, right? We want them to understand that AI is just something that's going to benefit their safety. It's something that's going to benefit their productivity, right? It's going to make their lives easier. And I want to get a sense of how you think that these partnerships can be very grassroots and sort of embolden that sort of message.
I think that's a great question, and I will give you a two-part answer. One part has to be what the previous speakers talked about, which is a deeper understanding of AI ethics, impact of AI, socially beneficial AI, and those types of things. So we need to ourselves understand much better how to do this from an AI standpoint. But the second part of it is really focusing on the goals of the regional innovation ecosystem. So instead of saying that we want to sell you AI, we should be selling them, we want to improve agriculture sustainability. We want to deal with low drought-resistant, et cetera, right? And then AI becomes an enabling technology to make that goal happen. And I think people will buy the goal much more readily than us telling them that don't worry, AI is safe, it won't hurt you. I think that's not in my opinion, that the right way to do it is to pose it in the context of the goal, which could be agriculture, could be healthcare, could be security, could be economic growth. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that we can think of, which are big societal challenges, aging, the pandemic. I mean, there is a whole bunch of things. There is no shortage of societal challenges that we can deal with. And just then AI becomes an enabling technology, along with possibly other technologies. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the way I think about it.
Thanks so much, sir.
Thank you all.